Hello, I'm Noelle or One Nutty Girl, and today we're going to be making a ranking list of every single enemy in one of my favorite games, Mario Maker 2. We're not going to be including any bosses from the list because, well, why get rid of that free content? But we will be talking about every other enemy in the enemy wheel. Now for enemy forms, we won't talk about them by themselves, but we will talk about them once we get to their main form. So for example, the Blooper Nanny won't get its own slot in the ranking, but we will talk about the Blooper Nanny once we get to the main Blooper. So now with that out of the way, let's get into it. So, why are these thrown enemy? They literally only work in 5 game styles: underwater, underwater at night, airship at night, castle at night, and somewhat in the jungle theme. And like, they work fine in those game styles, but in all the other ones they're almost worthless. They fall to the ground and shatter immediately, and while that might be fine when used as force damage when coming out of pipes or doors, that's a very niche use that others will feel fine, like a grinder on a track. For their lack of usefulness, even in the themes that they actually function in, they get 36. The Koopa Car is probably one of my least favorite items in the game, it just being generally unfun to control and play with. It's just a lot more fun to control Mario or whatever character you're controlling, and the fact that you can't place the car down by itself is really annoying. Yes, you can kill the Koopa in the car by placing up a bomb between 2 hard blocks and adding wings to the bottom one, giving the same effect, but it's still really annoying. Like, why can't you place it down by itself? I really don't see a good reason why. For the fact that it's just super unfun to control, and the fact that you can't place it down by itself, it gets 35th. Now this is going to be really hard for me because I really like the Angry Sun, but honestly, it's just not that useful. It lights Bob-Ombs, what I guess is decently fine, but lava bubbles and fire bars do it much better than that. And I guess it's also decently interesting because it travels based on the screen and not the actual level, but I can't think of and have not found a use for this. It's decent as an obstacle, I guess, but other than that, it's just not all that useful, giving it 34th. This is another enemy that I really like, but I still have to rank it quite low, and it's just really not all that useful, and that's the Hop Chop. It's basically a spring that moves, which I guess is kinda interesting, but it's just that a normal spring is so much more useful than a Hop Chop, as you could just more easily control it. If there was enemy stacking in 3D World, that honestly would be incredibly interesting, but sadly there isn't in this case, and now it's just a spring with a hitbox, which sadly isn't all that interesting, and it's much less useful than a normal spring, giving it the 33rd spot. Hammer Bros are very random, like legitimately so random that it's hard to use them. They can either throw hammers in an arc, jump, which makes them travel through solid blocks, or they can just not do anything at all, and shuffle back and forth. And there's no way to even guess what they're gonna do next because there's no sign to it, which makes them terrible for traditional or platforming focus levels. Their main use is probably as an obstacle in boss battles, but that's just not in a very important niche. The other enemies or gizmos will feel fine, so just for having a niche that's not all that important that other enemies fulfill, it gets 32nd place. Charvargh is a really cool enemy that I really like, but sadly I almost never use it. Like the Hammer Bro, their main use is for boss battles, but they can also be used for obstacles in traditional levels, though it's pretty hard for them to be used that way. But anyway, the reason that they're this low in the list is because they're just really hard to stay in place. They travel through solid blocks and have that like 3D mechanic that 3D World introduced, kinda like Meowser in 3D World. Anywho, just for them being slightly better than Hammer Bro in my opinion, I'm giving it 31st. Cheep Cheeps have a similar problem to Charvargh, they're just way too hard to stay still, and they're even harder to do so than Charvargh, but they're also pretty decent obstacles in water levels. And in the lava and jungle night themes, they're unable to be killed, which I honestly think would be better if that was the case in every game style, as it would make it much more useful in boss battles. But due to them being decently useful in that area, as well as being decent in troll levels, it gets 30th. Stingbees are just a Goomba. It's literally just a Goomba that floats. It's really not all that interesting, and you might say, well, that basically makes them a better Goomba, so why are they so low? The thing is, Goombas can be stacked on other enemies in the other game styles, Goomba has their Goombat form, and also, Goombas are just way more iconic than a bee that can't even fly upwards. Yes, this is a bit mean to Stingbees, but their niche is already filled by the Goomba, which gives them 29th. Spike types are in honesty not that interesting. Like, climbing on walls is, I guess, decently interesting. You can stack on enemies on top of the spike tops, which makes them climb up walls, but sadly there is no way to stack enemies on spike tops that are already on walls in the level editor, and even if you start the spike top on the ground, they fall off once they reach the ceiling, which sadly makes this mechanic, unless you use an upwards auto-scroller, which doesn't even really work due to you being only able to do it on the left side, since the spike top automatically faces left, and again you can't stack enemies on spike tops that are already on the wall for some reason, and it only really works with the medium speed due to it traveling faster than the slow speed and traveling slower than the fast speed. Overall, spike tops fulfill their role as an enemy that can climb on walls, but they don't do much more than that, which gives them 28. Much like spike tops, ant troopers are enemies that can climb on walls, which might confuse you since you can't even stack enemies on them since they're exclusive to 3D World, but due to their tops being bouncy, you can ride on them. Now technically you could ride spike tops in the new Super Mario Bros. U and Mario World's game styles, because you could spin jump on them, but because you can't throw or carry items when you spin jump, ground pound in the new Super Mario Bros. U style, it just makes it a lot more restrictive, which is why I put the ant trooper above the spike top, but just barely in my eyes, giving it 27th. Pokies are pretty underwhelming enemies in all honesty, like they don't really have a role that wasn't already filled, since a Goombat with a bunch of Spinies on top of it fills that same role as a Pokey. And since you can't put it in blocks, clouds, clown cars, pipes, really anything, they're just not all that useful. The only reason that they're this high is because they're pretty interesting when used on traps. Snow Pokey dropping a snowball is cool, get it, because of ice. And because Pokies are just way more cool looking than a bunch of Spinies stacked on top of each other, giving the levels more decoration. Because of that, it gets 26. Porcupuffers are decently interesting, I guess. They take 4 hits from fireballs to kill, and they can heal off this damage, which makes them pretty good obstacles for boss levels, or if the level's completely based around them. But that's all that they can really be used for. They're impossible to stay still like Cheep Cheeps, which just makes them hard to use, but for being pretty good at their job, they get 25th. Rocky wrenches are fine. Like, they're fine. Their projectiles are decent, they are decent obstacles, they're just fine. Like, that's all I really have to say about them. They're fine, so they get 24th. Now, Blooper is my favorite Mario enemy of all time. I love Blooper. I have a Blooper plushie and everything. But sadly, they're just not that useful in Mario Maker. They're pretty good at their job, being just traditional Mario enemies, and they're decent platforms and all, but due to the Blooper nanny being pretty big, and they're good in randomizers, but other than that, they're just fine. Due to their randomness, they're just pretty hard to use outside of traditional levels and randomizers, which is fine use, but there's just a ton of other randomizers, like Clown Car randomizers, so Bloopers just kind of feel useless in contraptions, but for being decent traditional enemies, they get 23rd. Skip Sweeps have a role that's something I thought we would never need, but now that we have it, it's fine. Skip Sweeps stay still when on conveyor belts, which is honestly really cool, but the main problem with them is that they're exclusive to 3D World, making it so that their really interesting use can only be used in a style where contraptions are just not as good as the other styles, which just really frustrates me. If there were in other styles, I definitely would rank them higher, but I'm sorry Skip Squeak, you're just not that interesting when stuck in 3D World. Bullies are fine, they work pretty good as bosses, and pretty decent as traditional enemies, but like a lot of enemies, they're just not super useful outside of the one thing that they're made for. Like, I made a full level based around bullies, but a lot of the things I use them in, any enemy really could be used in that way. So for just not really having any uses outside of boss battles, it gets 21st. Goombas are honestly one of the best traditional enemies ever made, and they're pretty good for contraptions or Kaizo/light Kaizo levels, due to them being able to jump on top of them, like most Mario enemies. They're just amazing all around, but not really super special in any way, so they get 20th. Wiggler is another one of my favorite enemies. It's just an innocent little angel, which is why I love that it's actually really useful. The fact that you can't kill it is super interesting, and the fact that you're able to ride it and use it as a makeshift platform is awesome, and the fact that you can use it as a traditional enemy is also really cool, which gives it 19th. Now here we have Dry Bones, which
Hi there. Let me take this one over for you. Oh, Dry Bones. Probably one of the best characters in the Mario universe. Or should I call it the Mario-verse? Spider-Man can do it, then so can I. And that doesn't matter right now. What does matter is Dry Bones. Well, I mean, he is a skeleton doing as skeletons do best. Being indestructible, yes, Dry Bones cannot be killed by anything in the game other than 2 items in the entirety of the Mario franchise. First one, Ice Flower, which they do not have in Mario Maker, and the second one, Star Power. I don't think many people really use the Star Power in Mario Maker, as I've seen, so as he stands, he is indestructible by the means of Mario. What more could you ask for? I mean, indestructible, skeleton, perfect combo. Dry Bones first appeared in Super Mario Bros. 3, and he is here in Mario Maker 2 in his greatest glory. Now, I love, and when I say love, I mean love, playing as him in every game that he's in, starting from, Mario Kart Wii to Mario Party 8. I mean, how could you not? He's a skeleton. A skeleton. After me telling you this, is there any other enemy in any other game that is cooler than Dry Bones himself? I mean, that is why. All this is why I think he obviously deserves number 1 on this list.
Thank you, I guess. Well, it doesn't exactly get first, but it does get 18th, so that's pretty cool. Magikoopas are quite weird enemies. Their magic blasts can make hard blocks, bricks, and even the flag blow be transformed into a ton of things, which is definitely interesting, but kinda hard to use, kinda like the Blooper, due to its randomness. But the fact that you can make the flag blow disappear and reappear is just so interesting that I had to rank it high, giving it 17th. We're halfway done, and at the beginning of the top half of the list, we have the Koopa Clown Car, which is for some reason listed under enemies. But anyway, the Koopa Clown Car is honestly really useful. The Fire Clown Car basically making shooter levels, and it's super duper useful contraptions due to any enemy being able to ride the clown themed car. And while Mario Maker 2 could definitely survive without the clown car, it's a fun and useful part of the game that would be gone, giving it 16th. Lakitu has a cloud that basically acts as another clown car, with some differences like not bouncing off the spikes and disappearing after a couple of seconds. But you can also have Lakitu itself, which you can place a ton of things in. You can place a ton of things in Cloud itself, so for being super versatile, it gets 15th. Lava bubbles have one main use, lighting Bob-Ombs, which is incredibly useful and they're incredibly good at that. They're also pretty good obstacles in boss battles or rooms where we have to survive for a period of time with their wicked form, which is quite useful, and they're just really good. And while yes, they're not that good as traditional enemies, but because they're very useful in contraptions, they get 14th. Chain Chomps are quite weird enemies. They're super useful when on tracks, and their stumps are super interesting objects, but sadly like the Koopa Clown Car or the Koopa Car or the Goomba Shoe, you cannot place them by themselves, which definitely subtracts some points. But still, when used on tracks, they're like affected by momentum, which is very cool and makes for great survival wounds like the lava bubble. And it's still a pretty great traditional enemy as well, giving it 13. Piranha Creepers are the only 3D World exclusive enemy that is ranked super high. So why is that? Well, it's quite simple. They basically act as platforms instead of enemies. Just hopping across Piranha Creepers is incredibly fun, and they're perfect for Kaizo levels, and honestly decent for traditional levels and contraptions, which gives them 12. Mechakoopas are enemies that I honestly never thought would be in Mario Maker, but here we are, and not that I'm complaining, as they're amazing. They're great obstacles, traditional enemies, amazing for bullet hell levels, great for boss fights, and while they're not super useful in contraptions, they're still amazing for tons of other uses, typically as things to dodge, which earns them 11th. And now for the top 10, starting with Boo. Now Boo is another enemy that's really hard to keep still, which might make you confused on why it's so high since I've reducted points for other enemies that similarly phase through walls. But Boos are different because they're amazing because they don't interact with anything. Because of this, they're perfect for contraptions, and the fact that they freeze when you look at them allows you to make don't look left or don't look right levels, which are very creative and cool, and due to Boos being able to work amazing in contraptions, they get 10. You might be surprised to see Monty Mole this high, but yes, Monty Mole is my choice for the 9th best Mario Maker 2 enemy. Why? Because of what Monty Mole can carry on its back. Monty Mole is the perfect enemy to make vehicles, bullet bill blaster vehicles especially, and the fact that they follow Mario's movement is amazing for contraptions, and because of that they get 9th. Koopa Troopas are just amazing. They're amazing traditional enemies for Kaizo levels, especially in Mario World, give the ability to shell jump, and while they're not that great for contraptions, they're arguably the best traditional enemies and one of the best enemies for platforming in Kaizo levels, giving them 8th. Now Thwomps are amazing, they're just...
Excuse me, but Thwomps are so cool. I mean, they are just ready to squash and crush your hopes and dreams, just like what public school did me. And now my parents, they don't believe me anymore. Now I just need a second. One second. Oh, sorry about that. But not only can they squash your hopes and dreams, the additive of them moving left and right as one of their variants is so good. It's perfect for traps and especially puzzles. Honestly, if you have a Thwomp and you're using a puzzle, put the Thwomp in and make it hit something. It's perfect. I plan on using it in my own copy of the game. I think I'm going to make a puzzle, like a labyrinth, like a puzzle labyrinth, and I'm going to call it Thwomp's Fortress. Now, yeah, sounds original. But I need to stop being sidetracked. Now, Thwomps, as a kid, I thought, whenever I saw them, I thought, oh my god, these guys are so cool. Spikes! I was basic. But, not only that, I also loved the idea of an enemy being indestructible. Something that you can't kill at all. I mean, unless you count the moon, but at all. Not even... Oh, wait. And the star. At all. just something about enemies being indestructible, it just was always so cool to me. Dry bones. Now, these are all obvious reasons for Thwomp to obviously be ranked first, and I can't wait to see it. Oh, I've been told that Thwomp was making it in #1. Let's go!
Well, yeah. All that is why Thwomp is, 7th. Now, these 6 enemies are what I believe to be completely essential in Mario Maker 2, starting with Piranha Plant. Now,
I'm really, really sorry, but I have to do this one more time. I gotta get it out of my system. This time, I'm starting off as a question. What is the scariest, most horrifying thing that you could ever think of, ever dream of? This creature that manifests in your mind. It crumbs deep from inside your deepest fears. One that, if you're not paying attention to, will eat you. Now, of course, I'm talking about the one and the only. Piranha Plant, of course. Who else would I be thinking of? Like, come on, guys, come on. Why is it that in every Mario game, that Piranha Plants seem to be able to chomp me down and kill me every single time, whether I'm going fast or slow? I don't know why. I feel like I should be disappointed in myself. But aside from their ability, their incredible ability, I might add, to chomp me down from their warp pipe homes, Piranha Plants just look so cool. Come on, come on. A Venus flytrap that can chomp and spew fire at you. What more could you ask for in a game where you have to make your own Mario levels? But another cool thing about them is that they can be used anywhere, from traps to even scenery. If you're doing a swamp level, I highly suggest you put some Piranha Plants anywhere. Not the ones that shoot fire, put the ones inside the warp pipe. They are a great addition and make your swamp level look more like alive. More like a swamp. It's really, really cool. But that being said, this is why Piranha Plant obviously deserves #1 in this ranked list.
oh my god, I swear to god, if I am interrupted again. Anywho, yeah, that, and the fact that Piranha Plant is just a hitbox that's affected by gravity, which is surprisingly useful, is why Piranha Plant is 6th. Not first, that's someone else. Now, the bombs are completely and utterly almost perfect. They are almost perfect. They aren't perfect, but they are almost perfect. But anyway, they are amazing. They light up when contacted by fire. Anything fire-based. Lava bubbles, fire bars, burners, even Bowser and Bowser Jr.'s fireballs. And they explode immediately if they're crushed, which is how we were able to get the Koopa Car by itself. And just like in that contraption, Bob-Ombs are key for a ton of other contraptions. From Bob-Omb tires to 4-screen scrolling, the game would simply not be the same if without the Bob-Omb, giving it 5th. Munchers seem boring at first, they just stand still and do absolutely nothing. So why in the world are they this high? Well, it's because they're an enemy that stays completely still, which means you can stack other enemies on top of them, and keep them still, which is way more important than you may think. This helps with platforming levels, Kaizo levels, contraptions, boss battles, and they're just good walls because you can't damage boost through them because they're completely solid, so you have to destroy them with a power block. And they're also good with contraptions even when not used for enemy stacking purposes, because they're just basically a paperweight. So yeah, due to Munchers being incredibly useful in tons and tons of scenarios, they get 4th. Spinies and Buzzy Beetles are tied for one simple reason: their shells. Shells basically act as electricity in Mario Maker, and are crucial to almost every single contraption in the game, which is why we couldn't make contraptions in 3D World for the longest time. Thankfully we can now, which I'll get into later. But yeah, shells are super duper important when it comes to contraptions. So which is better, Spinies or Buzzy Beetles? Due to the fact that they shoot spines underwater and on tracks, I'm even going to do the Spinies, which just gives them a slight edge over the Buzzy Beetle. But now, it all goes to the number 1 spot. Now, this kinda looks bad for me since I adore Spike, but I'm being serious, Spike is the best enemy in the game. By themselves, they're amazing enemies, spewing a projectile that affects a ton of things like question blocks, on-off blocks, PAL blocks, etc, etc. And in Mario World, New Super Mario Bros. U, and 3D World, their ball is completely affected by gravity, which is really unique when joined by Seesaws. But this obviously didn't make them number 1, so what did? Well, their Spike balls all by themselves did, because get this, spikes are in 3D World, which makes it so that we actually have the electricity in 3D World, which is amazing. They're also pretty different than shells, automatically moving without the need for a spring and breaking apart on contact, which definitely makes them even a little bit more useful outside of 3D World. So thank you, Spike. You are, in my opinion, the best Mario Maker 2 enemy. Congrats. And there we have it, those are all the Mario Maker 2 enemies ranked. Tell me how much my opinions suck into the comments, and until next time, I'm One Nutty Girl. Bye bye!